Well, hello, everyone. Good to see you. I'm the CEO of the Babylon Bee, the world's most trusted, factually accurate news source. I assume that some of you, at least, are familiar with us and hopefully share our headlines on a regular basis. We found out not that long ago that we actually surpassed The Onion in traffic and engagement. I don't know if many of you have heard of The Onion. It's kind of the older satire site. So now we're the second most popular satire site, just behind CNN.com, which I think is a pretty remarkable achievement. It's a pleasure to be with you. It is always better to be offered a platform than have one taken away. So I'm always glad when I get the opportunity to talk to, especially young people, about some of the issues that we're facing, because we are facing some serious issues. We're facing an all-out war on reality, reason, truth, life, and I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that. Real quick, though, before I continue, it's actually the Babylon Bee's 8th birthday this month. We turned 8. Can you believe that? Old enough for puberty blockers, according to some. That's not funny. Time flies, though, when you're owning the libs. We've been in this fight for a long time. It didn't start out as a fight, if I'm being honest. It was not. We didn't create the Babylon Bee to engage in a fight for free speech, for reason, for truth, for life. It wasn't really the main purpose. The main purpose of a satire site is to make people laugh, right? You know, and you want to communicate the truth, obviously, but you want to bring levity into a dark world. And that's why the Bee was created. But then we ended up on the front lines of this war and in this battle for free speech in the public square, which I think is one of the most important fights that we can engage in right now, because I do believe very firmly that the most fundamental right that we have is the right to life, right? That is abundantly clear, and I hope everybody in this room agrees with me. That's the most fundamental human right. But you can't defend the right to life if you can't speak freely. So the right to speak freely is a very serious battleground as well, fighting for that. And that's kind of where we've found ourselves involved in a lot of conflict. I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with the censorship that we've had to endure over the years, but it's been kind of ridiculous. It started back in 2018. We told a joke about how CNN had purchased an industrial-sized washing machine to spin the news in before publishing it. And Snopes rated that story false, and Facebook threatened to kick us off the platform if we continued publishing fake news. So we're like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Why in the world would you be rating jokes false? What is the reason for that? And this kept happening over and over and over again. We'd publish these jokes like, Ninth Circuit Court overturns the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or AOC goes on The Price is Right, guesses everything is free. We're telling these jokes, and they keep getting fact-checked over and over and over again, one time after another. And we realized that there's something going on here where this wasn't happening to The Onion that often, by the way. If they did fact-check The Onion, they would say, oh, well, it's a satire site. They're funny, you should laugh. When they fact-checked us, it was more like, yeah, they've managed to pull off this ruse before. They trick people. They're misinformation operating under the guise of satire. That's actually what the New York Times called us, far-right misinformation under the guise of satire. Just because we're telling jokes they don't like. And I realized very quickly I was actually wrong about this, because for a long time I thought that these were just humorless scolds. They just didn't like our humor, and they thought it wasn't funny, or they were offended by it or whatever. But it wasn't really about the humor itself. I think it was actually deeper than that. It's the target that they were going after with their censorship, and it went beyond just fact-checking, by the way, flagging us for incitement to violence, hate speech. I'll get into that one in just a moment. The target is actually truth and our right to speak it. Humor is a vehicle for truth delivery, and they didn't like the jokes that we were telling and the humor that was underlying those jokes, and so they looked for every excuse that they could to try to silence us and suppress our voice. And I think that this is one of the 5 imperatives. I'm going to go through 5 things I think that we must do in this battle for freedom and truth and life in a world that's gone insane and is basically the upside down at this point. The first one is we must secure our right to speak. We must secure our right to speak. And this is an uphill battle because all the institutions are against us. We are as disadvantaged in this fight as a female swimmer in a pool with Leah Thomas. That's the tall one with the testicles. It is an uphill battle. And when I talk about how we are being censored, I end up getting censored. I did a talk for the David Horowitz Freedom Center recently on the topic of censorship, and they flagged it for hate speech and censored it and took it off Vimeo and actually permanently suspended David Horowitz Center's Vimeo account. I was talking about censorship and they censored it. I was talking about how they unjustly censor us for hate speech and they censored it for hate speech. That was the reason that they gave. Come to the point where you can't even talk about them censoring you without them censoring you, which is insane. And I think Dave Chappelle was right when he said it shouldn't be this dangerous to talk. It shouldn't, should it? Now, there's the more recent kind of big story that happened with us where we were censored and had to fight back was when we told a joke about Admiral Rachel Levine. Are you guys familiar with this one? Where Rachel Levine was named Woman of the Year by USA Today, which feels like a joke on its own, right? You know who Rachel Levine is? The transgender health admiral? Woman of the Year? This is a man in a dress. It's like a South Park episode. And we're thinking to ourselves, well, our job is to caricature things and exaggerate them to make a point. How in the world are we supposed to do this? How do we exaggerate this? And this is probably the most common misconception about the Babylon Bee is that our job is easier now than it's ever been before, and that's simply false. We have to think of jokes that are funnier than what Democrats are doing in real life. I mean, imagine if you work for me, and your job is write jokes that are funnier than a Kamala Harris speech. Good luck. So we were talking internally, like, how do we satirize this? What in the world could we possibly do to satirize this? And one of the jokes that we came up with was, what if we just name Rachel Levine our pick for Man of the Year, Let's just tell the truth. This is a man. And then our editor-in-chief fired back and said, haha, you're going to get us kicked off Twitter. And actually, that's an important point because that thought process did go through our heads. We were thinking, if we publish this joke, we will probably get censored, possibly deplatformed. And I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this. Have you ever experienced a moment where you thought, if I post this, I might get penalized? I might have this content taken down. I might get deplatformed, and then not post it? That is self-censorship. And I think for every case where they actually engage in what I would call hard censorship, where they take down content that they don't like from these platforms, there are 1,000 or 1,000,000 more cases of soft censorship where users censor themselves and bite their own tongues, afraid that if they speak freely, there will be some penalty. They are making you do their work for them when that happens. Never censor yourself. Never censor yourself. We refused to. We joked about how it would get us deplatformed, but we posted the joke anyway. We're like, bring it on. We'll see what happens. And of course, the trans activists got a hold of it and started reporting it, and we ended up getting flagged for hateful conduct because you can't misgender. I think it's misgendering when a male person refers to himself as a woman. Do you agree? So it got taken down, and we got suspended. And then we ended up going through this whole thing where Elon Musk was mad about that and called us, and he was like, well, maybe I just need to buy Twitter. And we thought he was kidding. And then 8 months later, he walks into Twitter headquarters with a sink in his hands and says, let that sink in, and changes his bio to Chief Twit. And he sent me a DM that said, do you want the Babylon Bee restored? There will be no censorship of humor. That was pretty cool. And there's a lesson in that too, I think. The lesson that Elon Musk has taught us, and I don't agree with everything that Elon Musk says or does, but one of the lessons that he's taught us, and I think that we really need to take to heart, is that we have to stop caring what freedom might cost us. We have to stop caring. He was willing to not only spend $44 billion, we handed him an IOU for $44 billion when we actually saw him after that. He was willing to spend $44 billion and give up his reputation. He's known now as a far-right extremist, just like Joe Rogan and us, because he dared stand for freedom of speech. And then after this all went down and he owned the platform for a while, he had all these advertisers trying to hold money over his head and say, we're not going to spend money with you. We're going to take away $100 million in ad spend unless you censor more content. And he said, no, I refuse. You can't hold money over my head. You can't manipulate me. I'm willing to run this company unprofitably in order to keep people free and speaking freely. That's pretty profound that someone's willing to do that. Who's ever said no to Disney's Mountain of Money before? Nobody. Until now. We also must reclaim the language. This is number 2. We must reclaim the language. Defending life means defending reality. And defending reality means reclaiming the language that we use to describe it. I was on Joe Rogan's podcast about a year and a half ago, and the subject of abortion came up. And of course, he goes right to the hard case of a teenage rape victim. And he's trying to argue with me with this emotional appeal about this teenage rape victim. And I was standing firm on my view that it's wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human, and that abortion intentionally kills an innocent human. And he was like, but what about this? But what about this? And throwing these hard cases at me. And I said, if you want to bring abortion into the conversation, how about this? I say abortion is healthcare the way rape is lovemaking. How about that? Abortion is healthcare the way rape is lovemaking. They're opposites. It's not healthcare. We need to stop using these words. We need to stop going along with the language that even the pro-choice, choice to do what? What does that mean? What are we choosing to do? Part of the reason that we're having such a hard time with this battle and winning this war on the right for life is because we've conceded so much ground with language, and we don't even realize that we're doing it. And the use of these euphemisms has been so effective in leading people to believe that we're not actually talking about a human life. We're talking about reproductive freedom. We're talking about healthcare. No, we're not. It's not healthcare. When someone dies intentionally as a result of the procedure, it's not healthcare. So we've got to get past these euphemisms. The language really does matter. And I think when it's exposed, when you actually expose some of these ideas for what they are, people see them for what they are, and then they no longer go along with it. We're seeing this happen with DEI and wokeness right now. People are waking up from woke, are they not? Are you seeing that? And I think it's because they see exactly how depraved woke moral reasoning is. Woke moral reasoning, which says, for the oppressed, all things are permitted. And then you fill in the blank. Blank group is oppressed, therefore for them all things are permitted. That is a defensive, they're using it as a defensive terrorism. Riots, looting, whatever it is, all kinds of crime and violence. It's permitted in the name of wokeness and equity and inclusion and all of these things, and people I think are finally seeing how depraved this is, and they're waking up from it. This applies, of course, to the gender discussion too. Gender-affirming care. We use that euphemism. We have to get rid of that euphemism. The only thing we should be affirming is the truth. The only thing we should be affirming is the truth, not this idea that a boy can be trapped in a girl's body or vice versa. You're not helping anyone by doing that. In fact, if you hate children and want them to suffer, you'll tell them that lie. If you love them and want them to flourish, you'll correct them and instruct them in the way they should go. And stop using these euphemisms like gender-affirming care. It's castration, sterilization, mutilation. It is not health care. Describe it painfully, uncomfortably, accurately for what it really is, and cut through that nonsense. We also have to aim at victory, not compromise. We must aim for victory, not compromise. Recently, Kamala Harris tweeted, "Reproductive freedom has won in every election where it was on the ballot since Roe v. Wade was overturned. From Kansas to Ohio, the people of America have voted in favor of freedom." There are those euphemisms again, right? Reproductive freedom. And this is what they're running on. They're saying this messaging is everywhere. They are running on the issue of abortion, using their euphemisms, of course, to disguise what they really believe. And the idea here is that it's losing territory for us in the political world. You can be too pro-life. If you're too pro-life, you'll lose. Do the people in this room believe that there's such a thing as too pro-life, that you can care too much about innocent babies and whether or not they're murdered? You can't be too pro-life. And if we reach a point in our culture where it's unpopular to defend the innocent, the unborn, where it's so unpopular that you can't possibly get elected for holding that view, then we've got to go back and change the culture. Politics is downstream of culture. You've got to go back. Progress, if you're on the wrong road, means turning back and going back to find the right road. That's what C.S. Lewis said. I think we need to be willing to do that. Go back and keep fighting the war for people's minds and hearts and engaging the culture and arguing for what's true, so that we aren't continuing to be in this place where this idea that it's okay to kill an unborn child is popular and can win elections, and it's radioactive if you oppose it. It needs to be radioactive to be pro-choice, pro-abortion. Explain it for what it is, and make that radioactive. Make it like Dylan Mulvaney promoting Bud Light. Then we'll be in a good place. I don't believe that politicians are losing elections because they're too pro-life. I think I think, as Matt Walsh put it, I think the pro-life position is being blamed for election losses in cases where it wasn't even presented. These candidates aren't even necessarily making a case for life. They're not losing because they were, it's like when COVID was happening, there was the question, did you die because of COVID or with COVID? There's a difference between the two. Well, did they die, did they lose the election because they were pro-life, or did they happen to be pro-life and lose an election? Maybe they weren't pro-life enough. Maybe they didn't make the case clearly enough. Maybe they didn't make it with courage and conviction. When I was debating the issue with Rogan, he came around at the end of it and said, I actually see what you're saying. Why? Was it because I was squishy and soft and weak and met him in the middle and tried to compromise, or was it because I stood by my conviction and made my case? Compromise doesn't change hearts and minds. Conviction does, though. There's a great quote from Jeremy Boring on this, the head of the Daily Wire. He said, were I the president, perish the thought, and a 15-week federal ban landed on my desk, I would be overjoyed to sign it. Even happier, a 12-week ban. 6 weeks, happier still. I would gladly take any win on the issue and rejoice at every life saved. Compromise is a good thing if it furthers your goals. Where an outright ban is possible, get it. Where a third trimester ban is as far as you can go there. Then keep fighting. I would never compromise the principle, though. Abortion must ultimately be abolished. Every step in that direction is a good but insufficient one. So don't believe the lie. I refuse, for one, to believe that the lesson learned from election losses is that we've got to stop trying so hard to save babies. That is not the lesson we should be taking away from election losses. 4, we must win back the culture, and there's a lot of ways to do this. One of the questions I'm often asked is, why is the Babylon Bee so popular and successful? Well, we have really talented writers, for one. We're producing good content. I think we're willing to make the jokes that you're not supposed to make, which very few comedians are willing to do anymore. We're mocking the things that deserve to be mocked, and I think that people respond very positively to that, and that's why we've built an audience and have surpassed The Onion, which is pretty incredible that they let a Christian satire site do that. I have no idea how that happened. We're not afraid of cancel culture. We're willing to go there. We're willing to post those jokes that you have second thoughts about because they might get you suspended. But the other reason we're so impactful is because we're not just a Christian alternative to something secularists have always done better. We're a good alternative that happens to be run by Christians. I think C.S. Lewis underscored the importance of this when he said, we don't need more Christian books. We need more good books written by Christians. And there's a subtle but significant distinction there, and it's the reason our reach goes so far beyond the Christian community. We need good entertainment. We need to be telling good stories. We need to be engaging in every area. Reason and refutation, ridicule, and storytelling. On all fronts, we have to be engaged. That's the only way to win the culture back. And I think the best pro-life movie I've ever seen was Peanut Butter Falcon. Have some of you seen that movie? And it's not an explicitly pro-life movie. They never talked about abortion in this movie. It's a story, I'll give you a brief summary of it. It's a story of a young man with Down syndrome who escapes from this assisted living home. He doesn't want to be there anymore because he wants to go become a professional wrestler. He's got this dream of becoming a professional wrestler. So he escapes, and he's on the run, and he teams up with Shia LaBeouf. I think I said his name right. Is that how you say his name? Shia LaBeouf? And they're on the run together. Shia's on the run because he's committed some crime, and he's running from the cops. And the whole story is humanizing and beautiful and sweet, and you just come to love this character, this young man with Down syndrome. And Shia does himself. In fact, at the end of the movie, I don't want to spoil it for you, but I've got to make the point that I want to make. You should go see it anyway. At the end of the movie, they end up united together, and he takes care of this young man. And it's a beautiful story about how everyone is deserving of love and life, and it never even mentions abortion. It's got to be one of the most effective pieces of entertainment I've ever seen for communicating values without beating you over the head with a Bible or a religious message. It's just telling the truth that everybody deserves life and love, and that people that have a genetic disorder are still beautiful people who bring joy into your life, and they don't deserve to have their life ended. With this winning back the culture, though, comedians have such a role to play in this. There's a really great example that I think the Babylon Bee has been very successful at doing this, but there's also, thankfully, there's people on the left who are challenging some of the bad ideas that are permeating our culture. They're challenging the wokeness. They're challenging the gender ideology. You have Bill Maher, who has been on the left, and I disagree with him on almost every issue imaginable, except for speech and the right to push back on these things, and the gender issue, by the way, because he did a monologue on this recently where he got into gender-affirming care for kids, and I put that in scare quotes because that's not what it really is. And he said, listen, if we listened to kids and what they wanted to be and what they want to do, we'd have cowboys and princesses everywhere. He goes, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a pirate. Thank God no one scheduled me for eye removal and peg leg surgery. And you might think that that's just a simple joke intended to get some laughs, but I'm telling you, it's so much more profound than that. It's so much deeper than that. It's what Orwell described as a tiny revolution. Every joke is a tiny revolution. What Bill Maher was doing there was chipping away at the validity of an idea that never should have been taken seriously in the first place. And that is a profoundly important thing that comedians have been derelict in their duty in doing. We have to mock that which is deserving of mockery, or guess what? People are going to take these bad ideas seriously, and it's going to have catastrophic consequences. We have to be willing to engage in mockery and ridicule and laugh at that which is crazy. I think the best sign that we've gone mad as a culture is if we stop laughing at the absurd and start lauding it and taking it seriously. Finally, we must speak the truth with courage and conviction no matter the cost. We have to speak the truth with courage and conviction no matter the cost. Courage is contagious. It really is true. And I'll leave you with just a quick story to illustrate the importance of this. I think the Ash experiments that were done back in the 1950s display the importance of not conforming and saying what's true. You had these experiments that were done where the idea was to try to figure out to what extent do people conform in a given social scenario with something that's obviously false, not true. What extent will they do that? So they set up this experiment where they had everybody in on it except for the subject of the study. And what they did was they gave everybody 2 cards. And one card had 3 different length lines on it, A, B, and C. One was short, one was medium, one was long. They were clearly different. And then you had a reference card in the other hand that matched one of those lines. And everybody had the same reference card, the same length line. They all matched the same thing. And so they would go around the room and have everybody give the wrong answer on purpose until it got around to the subject of the study, just to see what they would do. Are they also going to give the wrong answer or the right answer? And guess what? Somewhere around 75% of the time, they gave the wrong answer just to fit in with everybody else. They were probably questioning their own sanity, honestly. When you're sitting around a table and everybody is matching the wrong line, you're like, wait a minute, am I crazy? But instead of just saying what was true, what was obviously true, what they could see as being true, they denied the truth to fit in and to just not be an outlier. The really interesting thing with this experiment was when they introduced a variable. They had someone at the table give the correct answer. So it was like wrong answer, wrong answer, wrong answer. Then someone would give the correct answer, and then wrong answer, wrong answer, wrong answer, and it would get around to the subject of the study again. And it changed the conformity rate from around 75% to less than 5%. Just one person at the table being willing to say what was true dropped the conformity rate from almost everyone to almost no one. That's how significant it is. You don't need a following, you don't need money, you don't need fame. All you need is to be the person in your circle of influence who says what's true, who says, no, 2 and 2 aren't 5, it's 4. No, men can't get pregnant. No, drag shows aren't good for kids. No, there is no such thing as a boy trapped in a girl's body. No, abortion is not health care. Be the person to say what's true and watch it spread like wildfire, like a good infection. Thank you.